Hello everybody and welcome to Parks Bros. It's Drew here, and today we're going to be slithering over 1 mile of track in our full in-depth review of DiamondBack at Kings Island. DiamondBack originally opened at Kings Island in Mason, Ohio on April 18th, 2009, as this B&M hypercoaster was the tallest and fastest at the park, at least until later on in its life. It being a hypercoaster means that it's over 200 feet tall in some capacity, and it has a top height of 230 feet with a drop of 215 feet, giving you a speed of 80 miles an hour over a full length of 5,282 feet. The total ride duration from station to station is about 3 minutes, but from first drop to brake run, it's about 1 minute and 10 seconds. So let's stop talking about just all the stats though, let's figure out how to get there. As you enter onto International Street, DiamondBack will be an easier ride to see, at least on the right-hand side. It is the tallest roller coaster on that side of the Eiffel Tower. The quickest way to get to the ride, however, is to walk up to the Eiffel Tower and make a hard right. You'll walk past, of course, the Great Pumpkin Coaster on your right-hand side before veering to the left, and DiamondBack will eventually be just to your left-hand side. It has one of the most beautiful ride signs in the park that you'll walk directly under and then find yourself turning right into a bunch of switchbacks. There's not too much sun cover, but at least there are some mister fans, which props to Kings Island for that. But following this absolute labyrinth of switchback queuing, you'll walk down a set of stairs and underneath the beginning of the coaster itself, right underneath the lift motor. You'll then take a quick left and walk up quite a few flights of stairs into the station itself, which is very moderately themed at absolute best, but it does give some great cover from the sun, at least inside the station. If you have your bags with you, make sure to walk across the train and drop off your bags in your dedicated bin. And let's talk about these weird seats. DiamondBack features 8 cars with 2 rows per car. Unlike many other B&M hypercoasters though, instead of 4 across seating, it's 2 across. But not only is it 2 across seating, in the front row of each car, the 2 seats are right next to each other with nobody on the outside, and in the back row, the seats are left completely alone with nobody to your right or left, at least immediately. This can be a little frightening, of course, if you want one of your best friends or family members sitting right next to you, but if you want the most freeing seat possible, go to the second row of any of those cars, and it feels like you're riding completely alone. This led to one of the most enjoyable seat experiences, at least in my opinion, but we'll talk about some of the downsides a little later on. Just like all of the other B&M hypercoasters out there, they do feature the same type of seats, where there is a full backrest, as well as deep and steep seating that ends up making your feet dangle above the floor. Add in the clamshell restraint that will rest between your legs, and it's the perfect way to feel like you're floating for the entire ride. Speaking of which, let's start slithering out of that station. DiamondBack immediately begins going directly up that lift hill, all 230 feet at a fairly slow pace. This will give you some beautiful views of the entire park surrounding you, as well as the woods off in the distance, but most of the rest of the layout you're about to encounter is kind of blocked by the track that you're just above. You'll slowly crest that lift hill finally before diving down your 74-degree descent all the way towards the ground. 215 feet. If you're towards the back, this will give some great floater airtime. You'll be floating out of your seat just a little bit, at least it will feel like that, as those butterflies in the stomach will start to show themselves for the first time on this ride, and I can promise you that is this entire ride experience. As you start to end your descent and head upward, you'll twist just to the right a little bit, and at the same time start to feel potentially a little bit of a bump. This is something I noticed especially on those outside seats that are more freeing, since you're just above those wheels. There were quite a few of those positive G moments that could feel a little bit jittery. Thankfully in my case though, they did not take away from the ride at all. It was just something I noticed. Those high positive Gs quickly turn into low negative Gs as you vault back up into the second highest hill on the ride, getting some amazing sustained floater airtime for a good 3 or maybe even 4 seconds. You'll then mirror the same exact movement after the first drop, so you'll turn just to the left as you get yet another amazing parabolic camelback hill lifting you out of your seat. This is when things will start to change, however, as you head back towards the ground, as the next time you head up, you'll be introduced to a horseshoe turn that almost feels like an inversion with how steep of a turn it is. That overbank feeling can provide some positive G-forces pushing you down into your seat, and I will say it was a highlight of the ride just for the variety. You'll then be greeted by another airtime hill, this time with a trim brake. I will say it is more noticeable if you're sitting towards the back of the train. You'll get a quick little jolt forward as the train starts to slow. Heading back towards the ground though, thankfully you get another turn, this one turning into an upward helix before encountering the mid-course brake run, where you'll experience a little bit of a breather from all of those airtime moments. This is where I think the ride starts to really shine towards the back of the train, as it's just airtime hill after airtime hill after airtime hill. Specifically ones that will start up high and end down low without going up too tall again, meaning there is more time to be pushed out of your seat if you're sitting towards the back. After 2 of those airtime hills in a row, you'll encounter another upward helix, this time banking towards the right, giving you a little bit of positive G's, nothing too crazy, before diving down into a pond. That's right, you're heading towards the water, as the train is equipped with water scoops that will make a giant splashdown effect behind the train and act as a secondary braking system. This is absolutely beautiful to see from off-ride, and it is super eye-catching. On-ride though, it doesn't make too much of a difference unless you're sitting towards the back cars, in which if you're on those outside seats, you can kind of reach your arm out and feel the mist. You'll then be pushed upward into the final brake run, as you'll see thousands of hair ties and rubber bands for some reason on the maintenance shed roof before making a left and heading back into the station. From here, you'll hop off the train to your right-hand side, grab your belongings from the bins, and walk down the exit rampway. From here, you'll end up in the exit gift shop, of course, as all good rides have, before being greeted with the midway again. Are you gonna attempt to face the snake one more time? DiamondBack. Oh my goodness, I have quite a lot I could say about this ride, good and bad. At least that's how I feel it can be perceived. Being a B&M hyper, and I would say the quintessential B&M hyper at that, it does one thing incredibly well. You could even argue perfectly, and that's floater airtime. If you enjoy floater airtime, DiamondBack could be potentially your favorite ride in the park. But if you're someone like me who likes a little bit more variety in their rides, you might end up getting maybe a little bored of it at times and want to go to other experiences in the park. Not saying that it's a bad ride whatsoever, just that it kind of lacks a lot of that variety. This ride, of course, is super stunning to look at, especially from off-ride, and the added in positive G-forces every once in a while is a nice little change of pace. In my opinion though, compared to a lot of the other roller coasters at the park, this is so flowy and graceful, even peaceful at times, that it's just the perfect way to get up to a top speed and chill out for a little while. All at 80 miles an hour, that is. The shakiness has never really bugged me, at least in my multiple rides on this coaster, but I do know some people out there in the coaster community say it really bothers them, so keep that in mind. But I do think this ride, although repetitive, can be a great fit into your day, and for a lot of people be super thrilling just because of that heightened speed. But for me, riding as many coasters as I have, I just might not find it as interesting as maybe something right next door like Mystic Timbers. It's super comfortable, freeing, fast, and of course tall, that I'll always end up coming back to it whenever I go to Kings Island. With all that said though, let's move on to my favorite and least favorite moments of the ride, as well as favorite and least favorite seats. Starting with that seat category, I will say my least favorite seat was, I believe, row 5, because it's the front row of a car, meaning you sit next to someone, and also you don't really get the best of both worlds airtime in the middle unless it's running really fast. A lot of the tops of those hills in that row were kind of slow and extra boring there, but I gotta say my favorite row would have to be probably the back right seat, as that will give you constant airtime throughout the entire ride, as well as some unique views on some of those turns. My favorite and least favorite moments of the ride though include include the first airtime hill as well as the drop into the splashdown on my favorites end, and my least favorite definitely being the 2 airtime hills before that final helix. I just feel like they're super redundant at that point. But what do I rate this ride? Well, if you haven't watched one of my reviews in the past, just know my rating system is a little unorthodox. I'll start off giving you an idea of how experienced of a rider you should be with a ski slope rating, a 5-star rating for intensity and fun, and of course, my personal rating out of 10. To start, I'm going to say you should be an experienced rider before taking this on, just for that height and speed alone. So if you're worried about height or speed, this thing can be quite intimidating. Now, of course, if you've been on plenty of the rides at the park, then I wouldn't worry too much, but definitely make sure to ride rides such as Adventure Express or the Racer and Backlot Stunt Coaster. If you can ride all of those and you're not worried about the height, I think there's no harm in trying. I will say DiamondBack receives a 4 out of 5-star rating for intensity for me, just because of a lot of those high sustained positive G's as well as negative G's, and that speed and height, of course. For fun though, I'm not going to give this a perfect 5-star rating. This is more of a 4-star rating. It's really fun, don't get me wrong. It just needs a little bit more variability in those forces to really make it truly stand out. That being said though, personally, I would give this ride a 9 out of 10, and I can tell you there are a lot of those at Kings Island. They truly have a phenomenal collection of rides there. Make sure to let me know though, what do you think of DiamondBack down in the comment section below? Do you agree with my ratings, or do you think I'm wrong? While you're down there though, make sure to check out all the links in the description. Of course, make sure to subscribe if you made it this far into the video. I would really appreciate it, because we're going to have more reviews from Kings Island, Kentucky Kingdom, Holiday World, and even a couple from Cedar Point very, very soon. But of course, until then, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next ride.